Well, we're going to get started. I understand people are trickling in, and that's okay. We'll just welcome them as they come in. But given the short nature of the workshop here, we're just going to get started. And Marcia and I really put together a semester's worth of learning for you, and then realized that really we only have a very short time. So you're going to get a minute of a semester's overview of grant writing. So we're going to click the slide here. Oh, look at this. See, it's discovering this front screen here. How fun. Okay, so Marcia and I are going to introduce ourselves. Marcia, I'll let you introduce yourself first, and then...
All right. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Marcia Black-Watson, and I am the director of the Michigan Energy Workforce Development Consortium. Is that a mouthful? Yeah, we call ourselves MEWDC, and and we are a collaborative of energy companies that are working together to solve talent solutions. We are established almost 15 years ago. It'll be 15 years in November. And so I am just grateful to be a part of this discussion. Talking about Grants 101. And so my role with the collaborative is really serving as a liaison between the members, the companies, and the pillar committees, we call them, that are really responsible for our strategic plan and our work plan for the consortium. And part of that role includes grant management. So I'll be sharing some of those experiences with you today. And I have been in this role for about a year and a couple of months. Before that, I was with state government for 34 years, 24 years with workforce development. And I was a grant maker as well as a grantee. All of the work that the office undertook was not funded at all, so became very good at it.
Yep, absolutely. And so Marcia says that she has a mouthful now. Well, when she worked for state government, she had a mouthful too, and now I will tell you that I'm the Deb Lyzenga, I'm the Division Administrator for Industry Engagement, Workforce Development, Michigan Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity. So another mouthful. We like our mouthful of words, I guess, right, Marcia?
We do.
And then within, we're gonna go ahead and flip the next slide, and we want to talk to you a little bit about why we were asked to give you this presentation. So within, I'll go first, Marcia. Within, I'll call it LEO, Labor and Economic Opportunity. Within, we have industry engagement, and that's the division that I have the privilege of overseeing. We have 3 sections: apprenticeship, registered apprenticeship, sector strategies, and work-based learning. Now, in each of these sections, we have been able to obtain, as you can see, through USDOL grants, through state appropriations, we've obtained over $100 million in funding. Sector Strategies has obtained, now Sector Strategies, think TPM. This is where Sector TPM falls, is in our employer-led collaboratives under Sector Strategies. Sector Strategies understands that we have to fund the folks like you who are pulling employers together. So we've been able to obtain $26 million. Sector Strategies and employer-led collaboratives haven't always been a household word like apprenticeships has been, but it's building, and you are hearing more and more about Sector Strategies, and I hope you hear even more in the future. $26 million there. Work-based learning, that encompasses our Perkins program and our ever-popular Going Pro Talent Fund. And since 2024, Going Pro Talent Fund has awarded over $200 million out to employers to train their workforce, directly to employers, to train new employees, incumbent employees, and to help pay for apprenticeship. So we've both applied for grants, and we also send grant funding out to grantees. So that's why, part of why I am here. Marcia?
And the MEWDC, the Michigan Energy Workforce Development Consortium, I said we have been in existence for the last 15 years, and we have been very, very, very fortunate to have the opportunity to obtain grants to achieve the work that we do. We know that, you know, Jason talked about you need to finance talent and have innovative ways to do it. So just over the last 10 years, we have been able to garner almost $3 million for, I'm saying, for our little consortium. We have 50 members, but we have about a little over 20 employers. And so to be able to fund this work has been wonderful. We were an early implementer of TPM. And so we received a grant from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation that was very instrumental in our work. We are also very fortunate to be under the sector strategies category that Deb has talked about under her office, as well as under registered apprenticeship. And so the state of Michigan has been very supportive of the work that we have done, and they have a number of discretionary grant programs that we have been able to avail ourselves. Registered apprenticeship, Michigan Industry Cluster Approach. But we also have an opportunity to receive grants from our local workforce system. Mm-hmm. So we've received specialized business services grants. So that's really our portfolio over the last 10 years, about $3 million for our consortium.
So I will say about the consortium is the reason they continue to be funded is because they get results. So I will always,
for saying that.
always, when you're looking at your grants that you're awarded, remember that results count, and grantors have long memories. And so commit what you can, don't commit what you cannot. So first lesson.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so we're going to do, like I said, the hot minute of grant writing 101. We're going to talk about, we've already done an overview, the importance of grants. I will say, brings innovation together. It can force collaboration. It is valuable within workforce because it reduces duplication, and that's very important to us. So if you're considering a grant, and I would just say, be sure to include your partners, reducing that duplication and innovation, promoting that innovation with other partners. So we're also going to cover types of grants. We're going to cover research and identifying grants, the plan and development of a proposal, writing the proposal, budgeting. Everybody loves budgeting. The submission of the proposal, the grantor process, the grant writing resources, and we're going to do a quick summary. And we're going to do this in a very fast way because we want questions from you. What have been your pain points in writing grants, receiving grants, and managing those grants?
Or just what do you want to know? What do you want to know? So types of grants. There's a number of types of grants, and we are living in a time right now where there are a number of grants that are available. So government grants, I'm sitting here with Deb, who's with state government, but local, state, and federal grants. And we at the consortium have had an opportunity to really be a part of local and state grants. One of the things I'll say about federal grants is you need to make sure that you have the right structure and the capacity to apply directly for federal grants. So we have really stayed in our lane to apply for local and state grants because of the requirements. We serve as a sub-grantee to federal grants that the state of Michigan receives, and that has worked out very, very well. All of these grants, foundation grants, corporate grants, collaborative partnership grants, they have all served to really support financially the talent pipeline management activities from our consortium. when you think about career awareness, career exploration, pre-hire training, and even post-hire training, particularly with apprenticeships, all of these grants can provide support to that. Foundation grants, public and private, corporate grants, and typically those corporate grants are through their foundations because corporate and foundations typically can't give to business, but collaborative partnership grants can include business and it can make them eligible for the resources that are available from the foundations and from the corporate grants as well. So, research and identify grants. And this is really about what do you need to look for? What are you looking for in a grant? So we've got requests for proposals, requests for applications, and those are typically those grant solicitations that come from state government or that might come from a foundation. Notice of funding opportunity or a NOFO, notice of funding availability or a NOFA. Those are typically grant opportunities that come from federal government. And one of the very informative and very helpful and resourceful websites is the grants.gov, www.grants.gov. Most of the departments at the federal level list their grants there. And what's important is you should really sign up for automatic notifications where available. But I don't want you to forget, there's a couple of others that aren't as apparent. Invitations only. So oftentimes a foundation or a very large nonprofit will issue an invitation only to apply. And what they are doing there is saying, we already know you, we know your work, we want you to apply. Or they're saying, you have applied to us before, we want you to apply specifically for this one based on what they know about you. What you need to keep in mind is that doesn't mean that that grant process is not going to be competitive. It will still be competitive, but they're trying to get to the crux of what they're looking for. And then, if you are subscribing to RFPs, RFAs, the NOFOs and the NOFAs, and you're really not seeing anything that you would like, unsolicited proposals, you should always think about, what do I have to offer that I would be eligible for funding, and reach out to those entities and request funding on your own. You do not have to wait for a solicitation. Making the decision, and so apply or not apply. This reminds me sort of as like online dating. You're trying to find that perfect match. So one of the things that we talk about in talent pipeline management is you really don't want to apply for anything and everything. There needs to be some criteria so that you as an organization, as you are going to apply, you can make a decision. It's a go or it's a no-go. So when you think about putting a proposal together, there's a lot of resource, human capital, and work that goes into a proposal. So you need to be extremely expeditious, and you need to be extremely picky about what you really apply for. Direct alignment to your strategic plan. If you've got to make it up to say, that's the grant for me, or if you have to add something, you probably shouldn't apply for it. Shovel-ready strategies are the ones that are really most competitive in grant proposals. Look at the performance expectations. Are they realistic? Are there outcomes that you and your organization feel like that you can reasonably accomplish? Deb talked earlier about partnerships. Do you have partnerships in place already? No scrambling for those letters of commitment and letters of support at the last minute, so that you can have seamless service delivery based on what the grant is calling for. And then again, what's your operational structure? Can you handle a grant? I talked about federal grants are normally best managed by larger organizations, by state governments, do you have the capacity, do you have the structure to be able to administer the grant? Deb was right. Your reputation as a grantee is highly important, and there are very long memories, and there are very detailed lists about performance.
And it's not just memories, it's records. So don't depend on
Absolutely, absolutely records.
records. Okay. So now we're getting into the plan and development of a proposal. Marcia said, essentially, paraphrasing, if you have to work too hard to make it fit, move on. Move on. So all of those acronyms that Marcia talked about, the NOFO, the RFP, the NOFA, all of any grant that you look at will typically come along with a summary at the very beginning of the grant. Use it. Use it. That's going to be your first clue whether or not that grant will work for you. And like I said, if it doesn't work, move on to the next one. Don't use precious time trying to make it work. The second, if then you say, I do meet the criteria, I do have the capacity, I do have the ability, the partnerships to meet the outcomes they want, that's when you start digging in to the requirements and to the meat of a proposal. The proposals that you look at will be pages long, even from the state. I'm sorry, we have our pages and pages, and we like to talk, and we like to put our legalese in, and you're expected and responsible to look at it all and understand it. So be aware of that. So that's one point. Second, if you can afford it, if you have very little grant writing experience, hire a grant writer. It is well worth the investment. You can hire an independent grant writer at a very low cost, usually, to the grant, and that will get your feet in the water. It may be that you will eventually be able to write those grants on your own, but that initial jump into the water of writing grants, a grant writer can put the list together. They look at those pages and pages of information and put the list together of what you need for your grant, the deadlines, a summary of the grant, and what's expected on the metrics side. And you've got a very short one-pager that you can say yay or nay to. So that, if you can, I recommend hiring a grant writer if you're very in the early stages of working with grants. The other thing that is very important to understand, well, we talk about the grant guidelines, number one. Next, get with your team and develop your needs statement. That's the piece where you're looking at what's the problem and how you're going to solve it. So you make a really dynamic statement about what you're trying to solve, workforce, economic, societal statement of what you're going to solve, and then you start backing it up with, if I don't solve this, this is my need, and if we don't solve this, this will happen. That's always a great way to start your proposal, is to say, I'm going to solve it, and the results will be. Goals and objectives come next. Make sure you put data behind it. And if you've got access to a data writing team, frequently we will get requests at the state level for data, and we try to honor those as much as possible. So don't forget your state workforce teams that could possibly provide that data for you. Then is the methods and the approach. Guess what? TPM is your method and your approach, and if you're naturally following the strategies, the data is already there. You've been collecting it all along. And then, as Marcia said, make sure you have your required partners in place. It may be that you find the perfect grant, but you're not at a stage where that partnership development is in place. Give yourself time. You can go ahead and apply for the grant. Maybe that's a good experience for you to have, but you may not get it because you don't have those partnerships in place and you don't have those letters of recommendation. I also recommend bringing those partners to the table early on in the grant writing process. They may volunteer to write parts of your grant for you. How good is that, right?
Awesome.
So, and then they may say, I will take this portion of the metrics and the outcomes. Your local workforce boards are great entities to have at the table working for you on these types of grants.
All right, so actually writing the proposal. Depending on who the funder is, Deb talked about there's lots and lots of pages to the solicitation. It will require you to minimally, these are the minimal sections from a proposal. You'll have an introduction. You're introducing yourself. What are you about? What do you bring to the table? You'll have a problem statement. How are you addressing what they're asking for in the solicitation? So what is the problem that you are trying to solve? And as Deborah said, make sure you have that data where you can show that there truly is a problem. Your project description, what are you going to do and how do you intend to do it? Then you've got your organizational experience, who is at the table. Deb talked about partners, what do they bring to the table? Do they have certifications? Have they been recognized by third parties? All of that should be included. An evaluation plan. How are you going to really identify success and you being successful? And how are you going to literally meet the outcomes that the solicitation is asking for? And then sustainability. What happens after the grant? Not just the activities, but how would that all be processed? Or how would that all be paid for, rather? And I want to just say, when you're writing all of these sections, you're going to want to make sure that you are actually putting your best foot forward, and you want to make sure that you present a very, very compelling story. A very compelling story, and do so by creating a brand of your work. Oftentimes, when you create that compelling story, you want to keep that evaluator of that proposal interested. And so a compelling story, it's not just facts, it's not just an outline, but what are you trying to achieve and where are you going and what approaches are you going to use? How are you going to use that TPM approach? And so you want to make sure, you know, you've got a jazzy title or whatever, because how are you keeping that evaluator's attention? And the other thing you want to do is talk about, while it may not be a section, but think about all the time, how am I separating myself or what's different about me and all the other applicants? So keep that in mind as well.
Okay. Favorite topic, raise of hands here, the budget. So the first thing you really want to think about on the budget, and I can go on this one, because I personally like the numbers. I like it. But that is not always the case with many. What you want to do is you really want, and this is from experience, pass or fail, whatever, you take it either way, but it's from experience. You really want to get your methods and your plan figured out first before you assign the person. If you have a person who loves numbers, then you really give it to them, but don't keep changing the proposal as you go along. That is the biggest headache, and it will cause precious, precious time to be lost in developing that budget. It's very detailed, and it takes a lot of working with spreadsheets and formulas and the correction of formulas. So you really want to get your plan in place before you turn it over to your budget person, if you are fortunate enough to have a budget person. If you're doing it yourself, you're going to figure it out real fast that, oh, I should have put my plan in place. So either way you go, make sure you got your plan in place. That is first using a spreadsheet. Now, I will back this up just a little bit to say everything we're telling you here, this comes, it's a direct descendant, I don't know how better to put that, from federal grant writing. So if I, as a state employee, put out a request for a proposal, I am using the federal guidelines and the federal, and that's how it passes down, because we want exactly from you what we have to report back up to the feds, okay? So first comes the spreadsheet. You're going to look at your staffing pattern. You're going to separate out your salaries. You're going to separate out your fringes. And I'm going to supply a template. I'm committing it, publicly committing it, aren't I?
Yes.
So I'm going to supply a template with formulas for you. It'll go in the swag bag. I'm going to send it off to Jamie. And you can use it or not, or you can change it up. But it can be a very good tool for you to figure out those staffing, the percentages. Like a director of a program may not be more than 5% devoted to the project. So now you've got to figure out 5% of their salary for 1 year, and what's the salary, what's the fringes, and then maybe it's a multi-year salary or multi-year project, and you've got to divide that over the year. That could get really complicated really fast. So that's the first part of it. The second part of it, now you've got to justify. You've got everything on your spreadsheet. It looks beautiful. You got all your categories that the grant requires. The next thing is your narrative. You've got to justify every expense that you've got. Now, what I like to do and what we do at state government is I put the budget at the top of a Word document. It's got every category within my budget. And then next, I have subject lines, and I justify why each expense is what it is and what we're going to do with it. So this is fast and furious. You also, this is your opportunity to say, I've got cash, I'm putting cash in. Sometimes it's a required match. It could be a grant that you receive that you're going to devote to the project. It could be in-kind contributions that are not monetary in nature. That's where you want to put this in. The grantor is looking at that to say, how much are you really bought into this grant? So, so budgeting is critically important. Okay.
So we've talked about a proposal, we've talked about the budget, and there's going to be other aspects of that grant package that will need to be submitted. So here we are to submission. I want to admonish you to not discount the submission, to say, oh, we're at submission, we've made it. Submission is highly important. When you're preparing that grant package, at the beginning, you should have already developed a checklist. You go through that solicitation, and you're looking at every single detail, and you're putting it in your checklist. So when you come down to preparing your grant package, you're going to go back to your checklist to make sure that you have touched on every aspect of the solicitation. And why is that? Because every aspect equates to points. Equates to points. So some submission tips. Now, if you are submitting with federal government or sometimes even state government, you're submitting using a database. But if you're not, you want to have a cover letter or a summary of your grant that's nice to really present your package. But those submission tips are review and edit, and you should probably have someone to review who wasn't involved in the writing. Does it make sense? And look at it from a grammatical perspective. That may seem spelling, punctuation, formatting, it may seem minuscule, but evaluators will get distracted when they've got to wade through things like that. You want it to be as perfect as possible. Follow the submission instructions specifically. Don't discount font size, margin size, number of pages, and then make sure that you do not wait till the last minute to submit your grant proposal. You don't know what's going to happen during the submission, whether it's through email or whether it's through the database. Always try to do it at least the day before. And then after your post-submission, it's really not time to sit back. Get yourself organized, save your documents so that you can find them later. The funder may come back to you and say, I want more information, which is a lot of times a good thing. So be prepared to respond for more information and wait for that notification regarding submission.
If any of you have worked with me in Michigan, frequently there is a request for additional information.
And the other thing, data. Deb talked about using data, but make sure that you verify your data. Make sure that everything adds up, not just the budget, but when you're doing your justification, make sure that adds up, because that will cost you points as well.
True. Points are king.
Points are king.
So while you're working on your documents and working on your submission, we wanted to just kind of peel back the curtain a little bit. We're not sitting back drinking tea at this point. No, we are putting in a joint, what we call a joint evaluation committee together. Now, why I want to make this point, and I'm going to skip everything else, but I think it's real important for everyone to recognize that that joint evaluation committee may not be comprised of people who understand workforce.
That's right.
So it's critically important for you, as Marcia said, don't let them get distracted by punctuation errors, by numbers not adding up, because they will, because they're trying to focus on your grant. And every time there's an error, they will get distracted and go off on a jaunt. So make sure that is why you need to make sure that everything is concise and that it's a story that engages someone who may not be used to workforce development. And I'm going to hop over everything else because the screen is here,
Right.
and we're going to keep moving. After submission. After your submission, of course, that's when the Joint Evaluation Committee gets together. That's when we're calling you saying, you know, I only have $450,000 left. You've asked for $500,000. What can we do? We want to fund you.
Right.
What can we do to make this work? That happens. That's what you'll sometimes hear. Or you say, I'll get 10 outcomes. But then the grantor is saying, wait, that's going to cost me $50,000 per outcome. That seems a little high to me. But I like the program, so let me go back to the grantee and talk to them about that. Can they do more?
Okay, so you can go into your swag bag and look at this tips for successful grant writing. It's a lot of what we've talked about, but being clear and concise, highlighting your impact, following the instructions, proofreading and editing, that's all extremely important.
Common mistakes, and I won't tell you if I made these mistakes, but I will say it can cost you your grant if you could be disqualified if failing to do any of these things listed on the screen. So be sure and follow up, clarity, don't miss deadlines. Now here's another, just I want to emphasize resources to you as well. You've gotten a 1-minute presentation of grant writing. Your local universities can give you a semester-long course. I actually was privileged to take a semester-long course in grant writing, and it was facilitated. The instructor was a foundation. So I actually submitted an actual grant to real foundations and got instruction and guidance from someone who actually does this every day of their life, and they were adjunct faculty at the local university. It's a great resource. You can go to grant writing workshops, you can look at websites, you can get books, but that was my number one way that I learned to write grants. It was, I tell you, it was pure hell, but, and I was working for a grade too, but it was worth every minute, every minute. Okay, congratulations, you've been awarded that grant, and this is where it happens. Just make sure that you stay close. You'll get a letter, congratulations, they'll assign you a grant administrator. Make sure you stay close to your grant administrator. They won't mind if you call them. Don't be afraid of them. They are there to help you. They usually set up monthly calls. They are usually set up technical support. If you have a question, email them the question. If you have a call, that's fine too, but follow it up with an email. So you've got documentation of what was said and what was agreed upon.
And may I say that staying close to your funder, you may feel like, oh, Big Brother's watching, but if there's an issue, you want to know that issue well up front, and most of the time, your grant administrator or your project officer, they're not out to get you because your success is their success. So remember that. Remember that.
We need you to succeed. We don't want to take the money back. We want you to succeed. All right. Whew. Questions? What have you got? What have your problems have been in grant writing? What have your biggest challenges? How many have, well, let's go this way. How many have submitted grants? How many have been awarded grants? Same number of hands? What are your tips for us as grantors? And go ahead.
Grant writing, oftentimes the writing part is the emphasis. Agreement is the emphasis. So you have agreement, the grant means nothing. If you have agreement, you can write it.
Great point. And one of the bullets, previous slide, please consider your grant to be a legal document. This is the one time,
Yes.
Read the fine print, every section, because when you're being audited or when you're being evaluated, it's the little fine things that can get you a finding. It really can. So it really, a grant is, you're excited to get it, but remember, it's a legal agreement.
It is.
I do have a question.
Yes.
So if you have a smaller initiative that's trying to break into a much larger work, such as this TPM, I run a TPM on early childhood education. We've been trying to get into the secular strategies, but we don't qualify as a secular strategy, even though we are an employer level network. But we're not in those categories. How do you make the case so that your employer-led collaborative can be considered, even if it's not considered at this point in the grant language, to be a fundable program?
It might be that you are not eligible. However, and then that's just part of the request for proposal, the eligibility. However, I would recommend that you partner with someone who is eligible and then have them write you into their grant. That way you don't have to go through a procurement and you get your budget in on the larger piece of the proposal.
You can also partner, what we've had to do, our MEWDC, we are not an eligible entity to accept funds. But what we did was we partnered with our state chamber of commerce, who is a nonprofit, of course, and actually I'm a contractor of the state chamber of commerce. So they provide our legal entity and they're our fiscal agent, and it really is the best of both worlds. It really is the
Deb.
best. Okay.
Kind of building on Michael's, but maybe even more specifically, I'd love to hear your tips specific to TPM, because for Minnesota, I'm running into this equity issue where TPM, I submitted a proposal to the Minnesota Department of Health. I was told it was the best one provided. I'm not a grant writing expert, admittedly, but I have someone on my team who is. So I was told it was excellent. It was the best proposal they've received. And the review
That's interesting.
Did you say it was only going to impact 9 employers? Yeah. Do you have?
Yeah, well, what we did in Michigan was identify larger associations that represent larger number of employees. So, for example, in mobility, Michelle represents all of the auto industry. I had both the long-term care associations. So you added more.
Did,
I'm wondering if maybe you would have described it in the grant more to identify specifically and extend across the entire state system versus the smaller, because that's what we did. Was try to identify how this larger group, even though it's one signature, one letter, but we
right.
much larger. We tried to talk about scaling it and that.
Yeah, and the lessons learned are applicable to many employers out there, as long as you're willing to give up the lessons learned and broadcast those.
Exactly, which we said, we took those things. That's good to hear.
And I would say, how many individuals are impacted? You want to bring that to the forefront.
the 9
While
employers.
it is 9 employers, it may impact 300 individuals. And so,
Oh my
excuse me, that's awesome.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. So you
Yeah.
really want to emphasize that piece of the grant.
So I love state money, I love local money, I love federal money, I like money. But I would really like to never have to get local, state, or federal money again because there's way more paperwork for it. But how do you go about finding like really legitimate, good foundation money or good corporation money? That's my question.
So we have found that the foundations tend to partner more with national organizations that we are associated with. And by ensuring that those organizations know the work that we're doing, the outcomes that we are achieving, it's really about really good communications. There have been a number of times that we have been invited to the table as a sub-grantee, and guess what? That funding is foundation money, and it is more flexible. But we have never been able to directly apply to the foundation. It has been another large nonprofit who then has a partnership with it. So we make sure that we stay close to our regional partners, our national partners, that we can provide actual resource to what the foundation is looking for. So we make sure that we do that, and that's how we have gotten to the foundations, but nothing directly at this time.
And even at the state level, same thing. Foundation funding is often smaller, but it's those, we stay close to the national organizations in order to get
Foundation money.
foundation funds.
So
Yes.
Nikki's cutting us off.
Yes, she is.
So we want to thank everybody for attending, and thank you for sharing your tips. I wish we had more time, but as you see us throughout the summit, please come up and have a conversation. Let's exchange information. Let's talk about more questions. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you both, and sorry that I have to be the meanie and shut down the party, but want to make sure that you all know that we made a short adjustment to the schedule. So your break is from 3 to 3:10, so we're a little into the break, but that's okay. What you're going to do is you're going to get the opportunity to grab a cookie and some milk and join a round table discussion. Yes, I did get milk, and there's many flavors. So grab one of your choice. We have discussions happening from our foundation initiatives and here on early childhood education and the EPIC Innovation Challenge Initiative. We'll be in this room in 3 and 4 if you'd like to hear about what Greater SATX is doing in their community. You can join for a conversation in there. And then we have several of our partners that will be in the Great Hall talking about apprenticeships, about skills-based hiring, about opportunity populations. So look in your workbooks, pages 18 through 23. You'll see the different prompts. So pick out which one you want to go to, grab a cookie and some milk, and head to your round tables. And if you're a SHRM professional and you want to get credits for this, please make sure to scan the QR code in the back corner of the room. Sorry to have to.